Okay, so this week we are going to be talking about a neurorehabilitation technique for a specific client. My client's name is Clint, and he suffered a stroke, so to the right side of his brain, so a right CVA, and that left his left side completely paralyzed for a couple of days after the stroke. He was hospitalized and he was in the hospital for 1 week. He also lost his speaking capabilities. So like I said, he was in the hospital for 1 week, and then he was moved to a rehabilitation center, and he did very well in there. So they actually released him earlier than his expected date. He is pretty capable of doing just about everything. He says that he really enjoys being able to walk. He walks every single day. Dressing, he is able to do for the most part. He's gotten his leg back, and so the walking is easy for him. But he has not gotten his full range of motion in his shoulder and anything distal to that. So his elbows, his hands, wrist, finger, all his fingers on his left hand. So his big concern is from his day-to-day life, he still cannot button his pants, so he is forced to have either his caregiver help him with that, who he does live with someone who can help him with that, or he is forced to just wear looser kind of like sweats that don't have the button. And that is something that he really would like to work on and be able to do. And another thing is that he is forced because he doesn't know how to tie his shoes with one hand, and the fact that he can't because his left hand isn't functioning correctly. He is forced to wear Velcro shoes, and he really would like to be able to wear his lace shoes. He doesn't like the Velcro shoes at all. So a month after his stroke, he actually had a fall in his home, and he fell on the side that was affected by the stroke, so his left side. So he does mention that he is feeling a little stiff, a little sore in his shoulder, and he connects it to that fall because he did land pretty good, he said, on his left shoulder. So in the evaluation, some swelling was found in his fingers and stuff, his fingers, knuckles, and like hand area on that left side, and his range of motion on his thumb is it's way less than it should be. So the two big client factors that we would like to focus on is flowing, getting that shoulder to elbow, to wrist, to hand movement back as much as possible, and also manipulating, and that's what brings in the factors of those shoelaces and buttoning those pants. So to focus on a specific technique or ideology of techniques, we're going to look at Brunnstrom's techniques. And Brunnstrom focuses on those stroke patients. There are 7 stages that Brunnstrom broke down the healing component of a stroke. And the first one is the plasticity. So that's immediately after the stroke. There is no voluntary movement of the part of the body or the limbs that are affected. There's no voluntary movement. It's very weakened. And stage 2 is spasticity. So that's where some of the muscle movement comes back. It's still involuntary though, but it can be activated and worked on by a therapist, or if instructions are given properly. He is able to do some movement. He is able to do some shoulder flexion and some elbow flexion. He still says that his wrist hurts a decent amount, and he can wiggle some of his fingers, but he's not able to grasp anything by solely using those hands, those fingers and those hand muscles. So because of that, I would say that he is still in that stage 2 of spasticity. He is able to activate some of the muscles voluntarily, but still there's a decent amount that are not, and they're involuntary still. But I think with some aid and assistance and exercises, he could get to that point. So I would recommend working with the synergies of the muscles, because a lot of the muscles are in groups, and those different groups can work together to form an action. So if we work on what's called a flexor synergy, and if we have him work on that abduction of that arm, and then work on rotating his hand outward and bending up kind of something like this. So the elbow is flexed, and we get that sideways abduction and adduction, since that is something that he does not have, and he states that in the evaluation. Another one you could do is the extensor synergy, which is something similar to that, only it's going to be an internal rotation of the shoulder, where the flexor was the external, and then the elbow extended, like extensor, and then the hand straight down, and you move that back and forth. While he does have good flexion in the shoulder, he does not have good extension, or excuse me, he has good flexion and extension in the shoulder, but he does not have good extension in his elbow, so that extensor synergy would really help get that movement back for him. And once he gets better at that, gets that movement back, another thing, for the pronation and the supination, for up here, your hand is going to be out, and then the extended one would be more like this, only down. He also states that he does not have good rotation in his wrist area, so those synergies would help with that as well. And then the stage 3 of the Brunnstrom is increased spasticity, which is stiff, tight, pain, and that could also be associated from when he did his fall. So if he fell and then was unable to move that arm even more so because it hurt every time he tried to do his exercises, that would really cause that spasticity to increase, and then just kind of a terrible circle and cycle of making it slowly worse. So we could try doing some passive range of motion movements of where the therapist, myself, would move his joints to really work on that AB and that adduction for him, as well as that pronation and supination, the twisting of the wrist. But if he is able to do it for himself and perform self range of motion with me showing it on myself and then him copying, that would work as well too. And just the goal would be to really get that range of motion back, loosen up those joints, and hopefully relieve some of that pain for him. So that would just be using the Brunnstrom's techniques, and like I said, there's 7 stages. So as the therapy progressed, the sessions progressed, we could continue moving along those stages, and then integrating what those stages teach us into his therapy process, and then hopefully be able to get him even more independent than what he already is with less modifications.